The ion rain hissed against the corrugated metal roof of the garage, a sound like a million tiny eggs frying all at once. It was a familiar lullaby on dustfall, the kind of weather that stripped the paint off cargo haulers and made the joints of old veterans ache. Homer lay on his back under the chassis of a heavy-duty freighter that had seen better centuries. A glob of grease dripped onto his cheek, just missing his eye. He wiped it away with a groan, his hand stained black and smelling of burnt ozone. 70% structural integrity, my foot, he muttered to himself, tapping his wrench against a rusted strut. This thing is held together by hope and duct tape. He slid out from under the ship, sitting up on the cold concrete floor. The garage was a cavernous space cluttered with the skeletal remains of engine stacks of hydraulic fluid canisters and tools that had not been manufactured in 50 years. Outside the bay doors, through the thick, translucent plastic strips that acted as a barrier against the dust, the night was a blur of neon pink and toxic green. Homer wiped his hands on a rag that was dirtier than his hands were. He walked over to his workbench, a slab of metal dominated by a flickering holographic terminal. He tapped the screen with a heavy finger. Message sent. 3 years, 4 months, 12 days ago. Status read. Reply none. She ghosted me again, Homer told the empty garage. His voice scratched against the silence dry as the desert outside. He leaned against the bench, staring at the ID code on the screen. It was an old military frequency, one that barely existed anymore. He had sent a simple ping, a digital heartbeat, just to say I am still here. And just like the dozen times before, the void had stared back. You are pathetic, Homer, he whispered. A grown man, a father waiting for a text back from a ghost in the machine. You are talking to yourself again. Homer jumped, spinning around. Standing in the doorway that led to the living quarters was Mia. At 15, she was already taller than he expected her to be, her hair a messy bird's nest of sleep-tangled curls. She was wearing one of his old Flight Squadron t-shirts that hung down to her knees. I was not talking to myself, Homer lied, quickly tapping the screen to dark. I was conducting a diagnostic voice test on the audio sensors. Mia rolled her eyes. She walked over her bare feet, patting softly on the concrete, and leaned against the bench next to him. She smelled like sleep and strawberry shampoo. You were checking the inbox, she said, not as an accusation but as a tired fact. Dad, nobody uses low-band frequency anymore. It is like trying to send smoke signals in a vacuum. It is secure, Homer grumbled, picking up a hydro spanner just to have something to hold. And reliable. Not like that neural net garbage you kids inject into your eyewear. It is not garbage, it is efficiency, Mia yawned, reaching out to tap his arm. Come inside. It is 2 a.m. Even the scrappers are asleep. Homer looked at her. She had her mother's chin, but she had his eyes dark, stubborn, and usually looking for trouble. He felt that familiar pang in his chest, the one that hit him whenever he realized how fast she was growing up in this rust bucket of a world. In a minute, he said, softening his tone. I just need to secure the intake valve on that freighter. Go back to sleep, kiddo. Mia lingered for a second, looking at the blank screen where the message had been. She is not going to answer Dad, whoever she was. Go to sleep, Mia. She shrugged, turned, and shuffled back toward the house. Do not stay up all night. You promised to take me to the market tomorrow. I need new drawing charcoal. I remember, he called after her. When the door clicked shut, Homer let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He turned back to the terminal. He should delete the thread. He should wipe the frequency and move on. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the small pedestrian door embedded in the main bay shutter. It was a heavy, authoritative sound. Homer groaned. We are closed, he shouted. Unless you have a Class 4 emergency or a bottle of whiskey, go away. Open the door, Homer! A female voice shouted back over the hiss of the rain. I have neither, but I do have a warrant to weld your eyelids shut if you do not let me in. Homer smirked. He walked over and hit the release. The door hissed open, and Virginia stepped in, shaking a wet poncho. She was in her civil investigator uniform, drab gray, with the blue trim of Port Harmony administration. She looked tired, her sharp features softened by the humidity, but her eyes were as piercing as a laser drill. "You are charming as ever, Virginia," Homer said, leaning against a stack of tires. "To what do I owe the pleasure at this ungodly hour?" Virginia peeled off her gloves and slapped a datapad onto his chest. "Your inability to follow simple weight regulations, you stubborn mule." Homer caught the pad. "I fixed the thrusters. The weight distribution is perfectly balanced." "You put a military-grade ion drive into a civilian cargo hauler," Virginia said, crossing her arms. "The scanners at the port lit up like a festival tree when that thing took off yesterday. Do you know what the fine is for unauthorized modification of a commercial vessel?" 500 credits, Homer guessed innocently. "Try 5,000, Virginia corrected. "And a mandatory audit of your shop," Homer winced. 5,000. "That is robbery. That is worse than the pirates in the asteroid belt. Come on, Ginny. The guy needed speed. He runs medical supplies through the blockade zones." "Do not call me Ginny when I am holding your citation," she warned, though the corner of her mouth twitched. She looked around the garage, her gaze lingering on the half-fixed freighter. "You are working too hard, Homer. You look like you have been dragged through an engine intake." "It keeps me young," Homer said, tossing the datapad onto the workbench. "Can you make the ticket disappear? Please, for the sake of my daughter's charcoal fund." Virginia sighed, walking over to the workbench. She picked up a stray bolt and tossed it in the air, catching it. "I can delay the audit. I can mark it as a first-time warning if you agree to fix the cooling system on my patrol skiff for free." "Deal," Homer said immediately. "You are an angel of corruption, Virginia." "I am a public servant who does not want to see Mia's dad in a debtor's prison," she said quietly. She leaned back against the bench, invading his personal space, just enough to make his heart rate tick up. "How is she, teenager?" Homer grunted. "Opinionated. I think I am a dinosaur." "You are a dinosaur," Virginia smiled, "but a useful one." The moment hung between them, comfortable and warm, despite the cold dampness of the garage. It was the kind of silence Homer usually broke with a joke, because he was terrified of what might happen if he let it settle. But before he could speak, the proximity alarm on the wall screamed. It was not the polite chime of a customer arrival. It was the screeching wail of the perimeter breach sensor, a relic he had salvaged from a decommissioned destroyer. Virginia's hand went instantly to the stun baton at her belt. Homer grabbed the heavy wrench from the table. "Backyard!" Homer barked, his voice changing instantly from mechanic to soldier. "I thought you said your sensors were broken," Virginia said, moving toward the rear exit. "Only the ones I want the government to see," he replied. They moved to the back door. Homer kicked it open, and they stepped out into the scrapyard behind the garage. The rain was coming down harder now, glowing faintly blue, as it reacted with the atmospheric shield of the city. The scrapyard was a maze of rusted hulls and stacked shipping containers. But 30 yards out near the edge of the perimeter fence, something was wrong. Smoke, thick black, and smelling of ozone was billowing up into the rain. A crater smoked in the center of a pile of aluminum sheets. "Meteorite," Virginia asked, shouting over the rain. "Too slow," Homer said, squinting. "And meteorites do not correct their trajectory." Suddenly, a bolt of plasma lightning arced from the center of the crater. It whipped out like a lash, striking a stack of oil drums. Boom! The explosion rattled Homer's teeth. Fire balled up into the sky, illuminating the yard in stark orange light. "Stay back!" Homer yelled, pushing Virginia behind a wall of scrap metal. "What is that?" Virginia yelled back, shielding her eyes. Homer peered around the edge of the metal. In the center of the crater, the smoke was clearing. Resting there was not a rock, and it was not a standard ship. It was a capsule, shaped like a teardrop, sleek and seamless. The metal, if it was metal, shimmered with a pearlescent sheen that seemed to repel the soot and rain. On the side of the capsule, glowing with a faint rhythmic pulse, was a symbol. A stylized eye inside a seven-pointed star. Homer's blood ran cold. He had not seen that symbol since the border wars 20 years ago. It was in the classified briefings. The ones they told you to memorize and then burn. Starcats. "Homer," Virginia called out. "I need to call this in. That looks like unregistered tech." "Wait," Homer said, his voice tight. "Do not call anyone yet," the capsule hissed. A seam appeared in the smooth surface, and the side of the teardrop folded upward. Homer raised the wrench, wishing it was his old pulse rifle. "Hello," he shouted. "Identify yourself." A hand gripped the edge of the capsule. It was a human hand, pale and slender, but the fingernails were dark, curved claws. A figure pulled itself out of the wreckage. At first, in the flickering light of the burning oil drums, it looked like a woman. She was wearing a torn silver flight suit that clung to her frame. Her hair was wild white as starlight and soaking wet. Then she looked up. Her eyes were huge, the pupils, vertical slits that glowed with a bioluminescent violet light. And atop her head, flattened against her skull in pain or fear, were a pair of feline ears. A long, slender tail lashed out behind her, knocking away a piece of burning debris. She stumbled, coughing violently. The sound was half human gag, half animal hiss. Homer lowered the wrench slowly, reaching for the concealed ion pistol, tucked into the back of his belt. "Well," Homer drawled, his voice trembling slightly. "Sorry, lady. The sign says no soliciting. And we strictly only take stray cats, not space royalty." The creature, the woman, narrowed her eyes at him. She opened her mouth, revealing sharp canines. "You," she rasped, her voice, sounding like gravel grinding on velvet. "You primitive hairless ape." Then her eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed face first into the mud. "Homer!" Virginia scrambled over the debris, rushing toward the fallen figure. "Ginny, wait!" Homer grabbed Virginia's arm, pulling her back. "She is hurt!" Virginia snapped, shaking him off. "Look at her!" Virginia knelt beside the woman, checking for a pulse. She recoiled when she saw the ears and the tail. "What is she? Is this a genetic mod?" Homer looked up at the sky. Through the heavy clouds and the rain, he could see something moving in the upper atmosphere. It was high up, barely a speck, but he knew what to look for. 3 red lights in a triangle formation. Hunter-seeker drones. And behind them, lurking in orbit like a shark in dark water, was the silhouette of a capital ship. Even from here, he could feel the weight of it. He squinted. On the hull of the distant ship, magnified by the lightning flashes, was a logo he had hoped never to see again. A stylized globe gripped by a mechanical gauntlet. Astrodyne. The name tasted like ash in his mouth. Admiral Cade Rowan. The man who had sent Homer's platoon into a meat grinder and then claimed it was a statistical necessity. If Astrodyne was here looking for this girl, then this was not just a crash. It was a hunt. Homer looked down at the unconscious woman. She was a starcat, a myth, a ghost story, and she was bleeding out in his backyard. If he let Virginia call this in, the Port Authority would pick her up. Astrodyne would claim jurisdiction within the hour. The girl would be dissected, or worse, and Virginia. If she filed that report, she would be the loose end Astrodyne would cut to keep it quiet. Homer. Virginia looked up at him, her face pale. "She is burning up. Her pulse is way too fast. 200 beats per minute. We need to get her to a hospital." Homer made his choice. It was the stupid choice. It was the choice that would probably get him killed. It was the only choice he could live with. "No hospital," Homer said sharply. "What, she is dying." "Ginny, look at the burn marks on that capsule," Homer pointed. "Those are laser burns. Military grade. She was shot down." Virginia looked at the capsule, then back at him. The realization dawned in her eyes. Someone is chasing her. Not someone, Homer said grimly. Astrodyne. Virginia froze. Everyone on Dustfall knew better than to cross the corporations. Help me get her inside, Homer said, holstering his pistol. Into the garage, now. Homer, this is aiding a fugitive. This is treason. She is a girl bleeding in the mud, Ginny. Are you a cop or a human being right now? Virginia bit her lip. She looked at the burning drums, then at the sky, then at Homer. She cursed under her breath, a creative string of profanities involving several deities, and grabbed the girl's legs. Shoulders, she ordered. They hauled the unconscious Starcat into the garage. Homer kicked the door shut and engaged the heavy magnetic locks. Computer, Homer barked at the room. Initiate protocol blackout. The lights in the garage died instantly. The holographic terminal went dark. The external sensors powered down. The only light came from the faint glow of the girl's hair and the street lamps filtering through the plastic strips. Protocol blackout, Virginia whispered, lowering the girl onto a pile of canvas tarps. Do you have a protocol for this? How paranoid are you? Just paranoid enough to keep us alive, Homer muttered. He grabbed a first aid kit from the wall. She stays here. No reports, no logs. You did not see a crash. You saw a fuel drum explode because of the heat. That is it. Virginia stood up, wiping mud from her hands. She looked at the girl, then at Homer. The playful banter was gone. You are scaring me, Homer. Who is she? I do not know, Homer said, kneeling beside the girl and ripping open a packet of biogel. But I know who is hunting her. And if they find her here, they will burn this whole sector to the ground to cover it up. He looked at the girl's face. In the dim light, she looked peaceful, almost ethereal if you ignored the tail twitching spasmodically in her sleep. I thought I was done with drama, Homer sighed, applying the gel to a nasty burn on her shoulder. But the universe just loves to send me packages. The next morning, the sun over Dustfall was a brutal, blinding white hammer that pounded the landscape flat. The rain had evaporated, leaving the air thick and salty. Homer sat on a stool in the corner of the garage, holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago. He had not slept. The girl, Fanny, though he did not know her name yet, was still unconscious. He had moved her into the storage loft above the main bay, hiding her behind a wall of spare tires. It was not comfortable, but it was defensible. Dad, Homer flinched. Mia walked into the garage, rubbing her eyes. She was wearing her school uniform, a gray jumpsuit that looked 2 sizes too big. Morning, Peanut, Homer said, trying to sound casual. Breakfast as well, it is powdered eggs again. Sorry, Mia ignored him. She stopped in the middle of the room, her nose twitching. Why does it smell like burnt hair and lilacs? She asked. I was welding, Homer said quickly, and I changed my deodorant. Mia gave him a look that said, You are the worst liar in the galaxy. She walked past him, heading toward the ladder that led to the loft. Hey, where are you going? Homer jumped up, spilling his cold coffee. I left my data pad up there, Mia said, putting a foot on the first rung. I will get it, Homer rushed forward. You act like the stairs are lava. Stay down here. Dad, chill, Mia laughed. She scampered up the ladder like a monkey before he could grab her. Mia, no, Homer scrambled up the ladder after her, his heart hammering against his ribs. He reached the top just in time to see Mia standing frozen, staring over the wall of tires. The Starcat girl was awake. She was sitting up, wrapped in the canvas tarp. Her eyes, those violet slit-pupiled eyes, were wide and terrified. Her ears were flattened against her head, and she was clutching a heavy lug nut like a weapon. Mia did not scream. She did not run. She gasped, her eyes going wide with pure, unfiltered wonder. Whoa, Mia whispered. You are magnificent. The girl blinked. She lowered the lug nut slightly. I beg your pardon. You look like the Starcat Queen from the old cartoons. Mia took a step forward, completely disregarding the fact that the stranger was armed and hissing. Are those ears real? Can I touch them? Mia. Homer vaulted over the tires, putting himself between his daughter and the alien. Back away. She is dangerous. She is scared, Dad, Mia argued, trying to peer around him. Look at her, she is shaking. I am not shaking, the girl hissed, though her tail was vibrating against the floor. I am vibrating with lethal intent. See, she is funny, Mia beamed. We are keeping her right. We are absolutely not keeping her, Homer snapped. This is not a stray puppy, Mia. This is a fugitive with a bounty on her head likely worth more than this entire planet. You cannot kick her out, Mia stomped her foot. Look at her skin. She is hurt. Starcat lady, are you hungry? I have protein bars. They taste like chalk, but they fill you up. The girl looked from Homer to Mia. Her stomach gave a traitorous, loud growl. I could consume nutrition, she said haughtily, trying to maintain dignity while wrapped in a dirty tarp. Homer rubbed his temples. Unbelievable. Before he could argue further, the intercom buzzed. Access Request Officer Virginia Thorne. Homer froze. She is back. He turned to the girl. Listen to me. You stay here. You do not make a sound. If you purr, if you hiss, if you so much as think loudly, I am throwing you out the airlock. Understand? The girl narrowed her eyes. I do not take orders from a mechanic. You do if you want to eat the chalk bar, Mia whispered conspiratorially. Hi, Dad, go distract Virginia. Homer scrambled down the ladder, smoothing his greasy jumpsuit. He hit the door release just as Virginia was about to knock. Morning, Ginny, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Back so soon, miss me. Virginia stepped in. She looked different today, sharp, professional. Her eyes scanned the garage, analyzing every shadow. I checked the logs from last night, she said, her voice low. Homer, there was no meteorite. And Astrodyne has a retrieval team sweeping Sector 4. They are knocking on doors. Is that so? Homer leaned against the workbench, trying to block her view of the ladder. Standard corporate bullying, nothing new. They are looking for a biological asset, Virginia said, stepping closer. Homer, did we make a mistake last night? We made a choice, Homer said. You saw a fuel drum explode, remember? Virginia stared at him. She took a step toward the back of the garage. I smell ozone again. And something else. I told you, new deodorant, Homer said, stepping in her path. Virginia sidestepped him. She looked up at the loft. Homer held his breath. Above them, on the exposed beams of the ceiling, Fanny was clinging upside down like a spider, her claws dug into the metal. She was directly above Virginia's head. A drop of blue blood was gathering at the tip of her tail, ready to fall. Homer's eyes widened. He had to do something. So, Homer shouted, clapping his hands loudly. About that date you never asked me on. Virginia blinked, startled. She turned back to him, confused. Excuse me. You and me, Homer babbled, waving his hands. Dinner, tonight. My treat. I know a place that serves real noodles, not the synthetic stuff. Unless you are afraid I will charm you too much. Virginia stared at him. A slow flush crept up her neck. Are you asking me out to distract me, or are you actually asking me out? 50-50, Homer admitted, sweating. Behind Virginia, the drop of blood fell. It landed on the concrete floor with a tiny plip, just inches behind her heel. Virginia frowned. She started to turn around. What was that? My heart, Homer yelled dramatically, grabbing his chest. Breaking because you are hesitating. Virginia stopped. She looked at him, shaking her head, a small smile breaking through her professional mask. You are an idiot, Homer. Yes, he agreed. But I am your idiot, she sighed. Fine, noodles, tonight. But right now, I have to lead this Astrodyne team away from your block. They are scanning for energy signatures. Keep your power off. Understood, Homer nodded vigorously. Go, save the neighborhood. Virginia turned and walked to the door. She paused, her hand on the frame. She didn't look back. If you are in trouble, Homer, real trouble, you tell me. Okay. I am always in trouble, Ginny. It is my baseline state. She walked out. Homer slumped against the workbench, exhaling a breath that felt like it had aged him 10 years. From the ceiling, Fanny dropped down, landing silently in a crouch. She stood up, brushing dust from her silver suit. She looked at the closed door, then turned her piercing violet gaze on Homer. The fear was gone from her face. In its place was a regal, terrifying intelligence. So, she said, her voice smooth and imperious, you just lied to a government official, risked a federal prison sentence, and debased yourself with that pathetic mating ritual display, all to hide me. Homer glared at her. I was saving your life. You are welcome. Fanny tilted her head, studying him, like he was a particularly interesting lab specimen. Why? She asked. You are a human. You are supposed to be selfish. Why hide a queen from the people who own your planet? Homer looked at the spot where the message on the screen had been the night before. He thought about the ghosts of his platoon. He thought about Cade. Because, Homer said, picking up his wrench, I really, really hate your ex-boyfriend's boss. Fanny's lips curled into a smile that was all sharp teeth and danger. Good, she said. Then we have something in common, mechanic. The week that followed the arrival of the Starcat was by all accounts the longest 7 days of Homer's life. Homer had survived trench warfare on the moon of Titan. He had survived the great ration shortage of '89, where he ate synthetic leather for 3 weeks. He had even survived raising a teenage daughter alone. But nothing had prepared him for the specific agony of teaching an alien queen how to pass a wrench without insulting the customer's lineage. Unit 7-4. Homer gritted out, his head buried under the hood of a hover skiff. I asked for the hydrospanner. This is a sonic toothbrush. Standing next to him was a figure that looked like a disproportionate construction droid. Fanny was wearing a heavy, grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big. On her head, she wore a bulky yellow safety helmet with a welding visor pulled all the way down to hide her glowing violet eyes. Her tail was painfully taped down her leg inside the baggy trousers, a fastidious indignity she complained about every morning for exactly 45 minutes. The sonic frequency of this device is superior for cleaning the intake valves. Fanny's voice came out muffled and tinny. She was trying to sound robotic, but she mostly sounded like a bored aristocrat speaking through a tin can. Your primitive tools lack finesse. I am improvising. Do not improvise, Homer hissed, sliding out from under the skiff. He snatched the toothbrush from her gloved hand and shoved the spanner into it. Just hand me what I ask for. The customer is watching. Indeed, the customer, a nervous moisture farmer named Old Man Jenkins, was staring at them from the waiting area. That is a lively droid you got there, Homer, Jenkins called out, squinting. New model. Prototype, Homer lied, smoothly, wiping oil on his rag. Military surplus. The logic processors are a bit fried. It thinks it is royalty. I am royalty, Fanny muttered under her breath, the visor vibrating. Silence, Unit 7-4, Homer ordered. One day, I will burn this garage to the ground, the robot beeped cheerfully. Ha, listen to that personality algorithm. Homer laughed nervously, ushering Jenkins toward the door. That will be 200 credits, Mr. Jenkins. Friends and family discount applied because I like your hat. When the door finally rattled shut and the magnetic locks engaged, Fanny ripped the helmet off her head. Her white ears sprang up, twitching violently, and she let out a hiss of pure frustration. I cannot endure this, she declared, marching toward the mini-fridge. The indignity, the smell of oxidized metal, the way that man looked at me like I was a piece of industrial hardware. You are pretending to be industrial hardware, Homer pointed out, walking over to the workbench. And it is working. The patrols have passed by 3 times today. They scan for biosignatures, but the lead lining in that suit scrambles the reading just enough to make you look like a malfunctioning generator. Fanny opened the fridge and pulled out a can of synthetic tuna paste. She popped the lid with a sharp claw and began to eat with a delicacy that was at odds with the cheap food. "It is not just the disguise, Homer," she said, her voice dropping the robotic act. "It is the waiting. My people are out there. The usurpers are dismantling the legacy of 1,000 years, and I am here handing you wrenches." Mia slid down the ladder from the loft, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. "I think you make a great robot, Fanny." Very retro. Fanny softened instantly. It was annoying how quickly the alien took to the kid. "Thank you, Mia. Your father, however, lacks artistic vision." "He lacks a lot of things," Mia grinned, hopping onto the counter. "So tell me again about the stars, the way you see them." This had become their nightly ritual. While Homer worked on the books trying to figure out how to stretch their dwindling credits to cover the extra food, Fanny and Mia would go up to the roof. Homer watched them go, feeling a strange knot in his stomach. He told himself it was just caution. But deep down, he knew it was fear. He was getting used to the noise. He was getting used to the extra plate at the table. And in Dustfall, getting attached was the first step toward getting hurt. Later that night, the sky above Dustfall was clear, a rare treat. The smog had blown east toward the industrial zones, leaving the desert canopy exposed. Homer climbed up the maintenance ladder to the flat roof of the garage. He found them sitting on a spread-out blanket near the comms array. Mia was lying on her back, pointing at the constellations. Fanny sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her tail wrapped around her ankles, looking not at the stars, but into the dark spaces between them. "You do not see them like we do," Fanny was saying quietly. "You see burning gas, points of light." "And what do you see?" Mia asked. "I see the roads," Fanny whispered. Her eyes were glowing faintly, reflecting the galactic band above. "Gravity is not just a force, Mia. It is a current. Probability is the wind. When a starcat looks up, we do not see distance. We see the potential to be elsewhere. We see the math of the universe, and it is beautiful." Homer cleared his throat, stepping onto the gravel roof. "Poetic. But can you see if it is going to rain tomorrow? Because I have a convertible coming in for a paint job." Fanny did not look back. "Your humor is a defense mechanism, Homer. You use it to fill silence because you are afraid of what you might hear if you stop talking." "I am afraid of hearing my bank account balance hit zero," Homer retorted, sitting down on a crate a few feet away. "So are you going to tell us the truth tonight? Or do we get more cryptic, mystic mumbo-jumbo?" Fanny turned. The starlight caught the sharp angles of her face. She looked regal, even in the oversized t-shirt she had borrowed from Mia. "I am the queen of the Starcats," she said simply. "Or I was. Until 6 months ago." Mia sat up. "A coup." "A betrayal," Fanny corrected. "My uncle. He believed that our ability, the ability to sense probability and nudge it, was being wasted on navigation and art. He wanted to weaponize it. He wanted to sell our birthright to the highest bidder." Homer felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night air. "And the bidder was Astrodyne," Fanny nodded. "They call it the Crown Engine. It is an ancient amplifier, a device created by my ancestors before we even met humanity. It allows a member of the royal bloodline to not just nudge probability, but to command it, to ensure a harvest is bountiful, to ensure a storm misses a city. Or," Homer said, his voice hard, "to ensure a fleet of warships never misses a shot." "Precisely," Fanny said. "Astrodyne does not want to explore the universe. They want to rig the game. They want to own the dice. If they connect the Crown Engine to their tactical network and force a royal to interface with it, no one will ever beat them again. Not in trade, not in war." Homer stared at his hands. The grease under his fingernails seemed permanent. "Where is it?" Homer asked. "This engine." "It was hidden," Fanny said. Centuries ago. My ancestors feared its power, so they broke it apart and hid the core in a sector of space that was considered a wasteland. A place no one cared about. She looked out over the horizon of dustfall. Here, Mia whispered. Close, Fanny said. It is dormant, buried, but Astrodyne has found the signature. That is why they are here. That is why Admiral Cade is here. The name hit Homer like a physical blow. Cade. Flashback. The radio static was deafening. He was screaming into the comms unit. Command, this is Bravo Squad. We are pinned down in the ravine coordinates, 349er. We need extraction. We have wounded. Silence. Then a voice. Cool. Detached. Not panicked. Bravo Squad, hold position. Adjusting strategic parameters. Your sector is designated as a high probability loss. Asset denial protocols in effect. Asset denial. We are not assets. We are people. Cade, do not do this. The link clicked dead. And then the mortar fire started. End flashback. Homer stood up abruptly, knocking over the crate. The noise startled Mia. Dad. I need a drink, Homer said, his voice rough. He turned and walked toward the ladder, his hands shaking. He did not look back. High above the atmosphere, the silence was of a different kind. It was the expensive, filtered silence of the Astrodyne orbital station Obsidian. Admiral Cade Rowan stood on the observation deck, looking down at the brown and gray marble of dustfall. He was a man who had aged with expensive precision. His hair was silver, his skin smooth, and his uniform was pressed to a razor's edge. He did not look like a soldier anymore. He looked like an algorithm in a suit. Report, he said, not turning around. A lieutenant, young and terrified, stepped forward. Sir, the sweep of Sector 4 is complete. No direct biosignature of the target. However, Cade turned. His eyes were pale blue, devoid of warmth. We lost the signal near the settlement of Port Harmony. It just vanished. Like it was masked, Cade smiled. It was not a nice smile. Masked. Interesting. The locals are more resourceful than I gave them credit for. Or perhaps our fugitive has found a sympathetic ear. Shall we deploy the ground assault team, sir? We can lock down the city in 1 hour. No, Cade said smoothly. That would trigger a bureaucratic nightmare with the Planetary Union. We do not want the eyes of the Senate on us just yet. Not until the Crown engine is online. He walked over to a holographic map of the sector. He zoomed in on the outskirts of Port Harmony, hovering over the grid where Homer's garage sat. Initiate a soft blockade, Cade ordered. Jam the long-range comms for that specific grid. Throttle their energy supply. Squeeze them. Make them uncomfortable. Make them desperate. And deploy the hunter drones in stealth mode. If anything moves in or out of that sector larger than a rat, I want to know. Yes, Admiral. And the local authorities. The local police are underfunded and overworked, Cade dismissed. Ignore them. If they get in the way, classify them as an industrial accident. Virginia Thorne stared at her monitor in the Port Harmony administration tower. The coffee in her mug was shaking, rippling with the vibrations of her tapping foot. This does not make sense, she muttered. On her screen, the shipping lanes were a mess. Cargo haulers were being diverted away from the southern quadrant, Homer's quadrant, by automated maintenance buoys that had not been scheduled. She pulled up the energy grid. A localized brownout was being targeted specifically at the residential blocks bordering the desert. They are tightening the noose, Virginia whispered. She glanced at the photo on her desk. It was an old physical print frayed at the edges. It showed a younger Homer grinning, holding a toddler Mia on his shoulders. Virginia was in the background, laughing. She knew Homer was lying. She knew he had the alien. And she knew that if Astrodyne was going to this much trouble, they were not going to knock on the door with a warrant. They were going to kick it down with a missile. She opened her drawer and pulled out a small, illegal device. It was a surveillance drone, no bigger than a hummingbird. She had confiscated it from a smuggler 3 months ago and forgotten to to log it into evidence. "Time to see what you are really up to, you stubborn idiot," she said. She launched the drone out of her window. It buzzed away into the night, heading for the garage. Inside the garage, the tension was thick enough to cut with a plasma torch. Homer was pacing. Fanny was sitting on the workbench watching him. Mia had gone to bed sensing the storm brewing between the adults. "You should not have told me that name," Homer said, stopping to point a finger at Fanny. "Anyone but Cade." "Does it matter who pulls the trigger?" Fanny asked calmly. "Yes, it matters," Homer shouted. "Because that man does not make mistakes. If he is here, he has already calculated the outcome. We are just variables in an equation he has already solved." "You give him too much credit," Fanny said, hopping down. Her tail lashed behind her. "He is arrogant. He thinks he can control the Crown engine. He does not understand that probability is not just math. It will. It is spirit." "Spirit does not stop a railgun slug," Homer snapped. "You Starcats are all the same. You sit in your towers and talk about destiny and currents while people down here bleed in the mud to make your empire run. You think you are better than us because you can see the math. We are the ones who have to live through the bad numbers." Fanny bristled, her ears flattening. "And you humans are parasites. You consume everything. You build, you destroy, you pave over worlds. You saved me, yes. But do not pretend your species is noble. You are chaotic, greedy." "Greedy," Homer laughed, a bitter barking sound. "Let me tell you something about humans. We are the only species in the galaxy that will pack bond with a Roomba. We are the only ones who will run toward a fire to save a stranger. Yeah, we are messy. But when the chips are down, we hold the line. We do not sacrifice assets for statistics." He leaned in close to her. "My platoon died because Cade did the math and decided we were too expensive to save. I am not going to let him do the math on my daughter." Fanny stared at him. The anger in her eyes faded, replaced by something unreadable. She looked at him with a strange intensity, searching his face. "I know," she said softly. "I saw your file, Homer. I know what you lost." Homer paused. "My file is classified. Even the hackers in Port Harmony cannot get the full, unredacted combat logs." "How did you see it?" Fanny flinched. For the first time, the Queen looked like she had been caught. She looked away, feigning interest in a pile of scrap metal. "The Crown engine, it connects to data streams. I glimpsed many things before I fled." It was a lie. Homer knew the smell of a lie better than he knew the smell of engine oil. But before he could press her, a shout came from the living quarters. "Dad, Fanny, come quick." It was Mia. Homer and Fanny sprinted to the back room. Mia was sitting on her bed, her personal data pad plugged into the external antenna cable she had run through the window. "I was trying to boost the signal to watch a movie," Mia said, her eyes wide. "But the antenna picked up something else. It is really weird." "What is it?" Homer asked, looking at the screen. "It is a direct beam transmission," Mia explained. "Super narrow. It is bouncing off the ionosphere right onto our roof. And look at the destination ID." Homer leaned in. The breath hitched in his throat. "Target ID SGT. H. Galloway. 445 Alpha Bravo." It was his old military ID. The one that had been deactivated 10 years ago. "Who is sending this?" Homer whispered. "Not who," Fanny said, stepping forward. Her eyes were glowing so brightly they illuminated the room. "What?" She reached out and touched the screen. The scrolling code, a mess of hexadecimal gibberish, suddenly reorganized itself. It formed patterns, fractals, shapes that hurt the eyes to look at. "It is the Crown engine," Fanny said, her voice trembling. "It is waking up, and it is calling you." "Me," Homer backed away. "Why the hell would an alien superweapon be calling a retired grease monkey?" "Because," Fanny turned to him. "You have a piece of it." Homer froze. "What?" "The signal is a handshake protocol," Fanny explained rapidly. "It is looking for its missing components. It is pinging a sympathetic resonance signature." "Homer, Do you have anything unusual? Anything from the war? Something you kept? Homer's mind raced. He thought of his footlocker, the one buried under the floorboards in the storage closet, the one he never opened. The geometric, he whispered. Show me, Fanny commanded. Homer led them to the closet. He pulled up the loose floorboards and dragged out a heavy, battered plasteel crate. His hands shook as he keyed in the combination. The date of the ambush. The lid popped open. Inside were his old dog tags, a faded photo of his squad, a broken pistol, and it. It was a dodecahedron about the size of a grapefruit. It was made of a metal that felt warm to the touch and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. I found it in the wreckage of the command bunker, Homer said quietly. After the bombardment. It was the only thing not scratched. I do not know why I kept it. I just felt like I shouldn't leave it there, Fanny gasped. She reached out, her claws trembling. As her finger brushed the object, it hummed, a low, resonant sound that vibrated in their teeth. The dull metal suddenly flared with veins of gold and violet light. It is a stabilizer core, Fanny breathed. Without this, the Crown engine is unstable. It cannot focus probability without tearing reality apart. If Cade tries to turn on the main engine without this, it will be a disaster, Mia finished. Or a weapon of mass destruction that he cannot control, Fanny said. She looked at Homer with new eyes. You carried this for 10 years. You were the keeper of the key and you did not even know it. Homer stared at the glowing object. My friends, he choked out. The platoon. We were not just abandoned. We were the delivery system. Cade sent us there to retrieve this, didn't he? And when things got hot, he decided to bury the evidence along with the squad. The realization washed over him like acid. It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't just war. It was a transaction. Cade had traded 30 lives for a chance to secure a battery, and when the retrieval failed, he wrote them off. Homer grabbed the dodecahedron. His knuckles were white. He killed them for a paperweight, Homer snarled. The HFY spirit, the sheer bloody-minded stubbornness of humanity, woke up inside him. It wasn't the sad, tired feeling anymore. It was a cold, sharp rage. Fanny, Homer said, looking at the Queen. You want to stop him. More than anything, she replied. You said this thing connects to the system, Homer said. Can we use it? Can we use this piece to talk back to the main engine? If we can bypass the encryption, yes. We could feed false data to the main core, or we could overload it. Then we have a deal, Homer said. I keep you safe. You help me crack this thing, and we are going to use it to break Cade's nose. Metaphorically, and maybe literally. A temporary alliance, Fanny nodded, extending a clawed hand. For vengeance. No, Homer shook his head, taking her hand. For the neighborhood, and for the guys who didn't come home. Mia watched them, her eyes shining. This is so cool. We are like a secret rebel base. We are a garage, Mia, Homer corrected, though a grim smile was forming on his face. But yeah, we are rebels now. Outside in the dark sky, a tiny drone hovered silently near the vent of the garage. Its camera lens zoomed in, capturing the violet glow emanating from the storage closet. Miles away in her office, Virginia watched the feed. She saw the alien Queen. She saw the glowing artifact. She saw the look on Homer's face, a look she hadn't seen since he first came back from the war. Oh, Homer, she whispered, her hand hovering over her communicator. What have you gotten yourself into? She reached for the button to call the chief of police. Then, she hesitated. She looked at the shipping reports again. The blockade, the bullying tactics. She moved her hand away from the call button. Instead, she opened a new command window. Protocol encrypted override. Target city surveillance grid. Action loop footage for Sector 4. I will give you 24 hours, you idiot, she said to the screen. Do not make me regret this. On the Obsidian Admiral, Cade watched a different screen. The signal from the Crown engine had spiked again just for a second before vanishing, but he had triangulated the source. "Sir," the lieutenant said. The signature originated from the residential grid, specifically the structure registered to Homer Galloway. Cade stood up. He smoothed his uniform. "Galloway," he mused. "The survivor. I should have known. The probability of him having the core was less than 0.01%. And yet here we are." "Orders, sir, bombardment." "No," Cade said. He walked to the door. "Prepare my shuttle, and prepare the heavy guard." He paused, looking back at the planet. "If you want something done right," Cade said, "you have to do it yourself. Besides, I haven't killed a ghost in a long time." The holographic projection hovering over Homer's grease-stained workbench was not showing a diagnostic of a faulty thruster. Instead, it displayed a rotating three-dimensional map of Dustfall, the planet they called home. But the map was wrong. It was overlaid with angry, pulsing red veins that seemed to choke the settlement, specifically converging on Port Harmony. Fanny stood before the projection, her violet eyes reflecting the grim light. She was no longer wearing the oversized mechanic's jumpsuit. She had donned a makeshift tunic she had fashioned from thermal blankets, giving her a semblance of the regal bearing she had lost. "It is not an invasion," Fanny said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. "It is a sales pitch." Homer leaned against a stack of tires, arms crossed. "You are telling me Cade came all this way, brought a fleet and locked down my neighborhood just to host a shopping channel special?" "Do not be reductive, mechanic," Fanny snapped, though her tail twitched with anxiety. "The Crown Auction is the most exclusive event in the galactic underworld. Warlords, syndicate heads, corrupt planetary governors. They are all tuning in via encrypted channels right now. Astrodyne needs to prove that the Crown engine works." "By doing what?" Mia asked. She was sitting on the stairs, hugging her knees. Fanny pointed a clawed finger at the red veins on the map. "By demonstrating probability adjustment. See these lines? They represent statistical likelihoods of catastrophe. Pipeline bursts, reactor leaks, structural failures in the orbital domes. Astrodyne has sold tickets to the show. The highest bidder gets to choose a disaster, and Cade will use the engine to make it happen, or make it disappear. They are selling luck, Mia. They are selling the power to decide who lives and who dies by tweaking the math of the universe." Homer stared at the map. He saw the red line cutting through the Sector 4 marketplace. He saw another bisecting the primary water filtration plant. "And Dustfall," Homer asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Dustfall is the petri dish," Fanny whispered. "If the demo succeeds, Cade gets rich. If the calibration is off, if the probability backlash hits," she gestured to the map, "Port Harmony becomes a crater of unfortunate coincidences. A chain reaction of bad luck that will look like a natural disaster to the insurance companies." Homer pushed himself off the tires. He walked to the window, peering out through the blinds at the dusty street. It looked peaceful. Just another hot, slow afternoon. But now all he could see were target markers painted on the backs of his neighbors. "He is using us as crash test dummies," Homer muttered. "Classic Cade. We are not people to him. We are just data points in a margin of error." 3 miles away, in the cool, sterile air of the Port Harmony Council chamber, Virginia, Thorne was fighting a losing battle. The room was dominated by a long table of polished synthetic wood. At the head sat the mayor, a man whose spine was as flexible as a wet noodle. But the real power in the room stood by the window, looking out at the smog-choked skyline. Admiral Cade Rowan did not wear armor. He wore a crisp, midnight blue suit that cost more than Virginia made in 10 years. "Admiral," Virginia said, keeping her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. "With all due respect, these energy fluctuations you are testing are wreaking havoc on our grid. We have had 3 power surges in the hospital district alone. I am formally requesting you suspend operations until a safety audit is conducted." Cade turned slowly. His face was a mask of polite boredom. "Officer Thorne, I admire your diligence, truly. It is rare to see such spirited defense of a backwater outpost." "This backwater is my jurisdiction," Virginia said, standing her ground. Cade walked over to her, his footsteps silent on the carpet. He stopped just inside her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and ozone. "Statistics are a funny thing, Officer Thorne," Cade said softly. "Did you know that the probability of a civil servant suffering a fatal accident involving a malfunction of their personal transport vehicle increases by 300% when they investigate Level 5 corporate clearance zones?" The room went cold. The mayor coughed nervously, looking at his datapad. Virginia narrowed her eyes. "Are you threatening me, Admiral?" "I am quoting actuary tables," Cade smiled. It was a reptile smile. "Astrodyne is here to ensure the future stability of the sector. Sometimes, stability requires pruning the variables that cause friction. Do not be a variable, Virginia. Go home. Pet your cat. Ignore the hum in the air." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And tell your friend Homer that his localized jamming signal is impressive, but ultimately futile. I will come for my property soon." Virginia felt the blood drain from her face. He knew. He knew she was covering for Homer. "Meeting adjourned," Cade announced to the room, though he had no authority to do so. He walked out, his entourage of silent, cybernetic guards trailing behind him. Virginia grabbed her datapad. She needed to get to the garage. Now. That night, the desert wind howled like a wounded animal. Homer left the garage, pulling his collar up against the stinging sand. He walked 3 blocks to a building that looked like a pile of scrap metal, welded into the shape of a house. He banged on the door. "Dr. Halim, open up." The door creaked open. Dr. Halim, a man who looked like he was 80% mechanic and 20% human, squinted out. One of his eyes was a spinning optical lens. "Homer." Halim grunted. "It is 2 in the morning. Unless you have a severed limb, go away." "I need to talk," Homer said. "And I brought the good whiskey." 5 minutes later, they were sitting in Halim's cluttered workshop, surrounded by half-built medical drones. Homer poured a generous shot into a dirty glass. "I have to run, Doc," Homer said, staring at the amber liquid. "I have to take Mia and get off-world, tonight." Dr. Halim adjusted his optical lens, focusing on Homer. "Running you." That does not sound like the Homer who punched a mining drill because it looked at him wrong. "It is different this time," Homer said, his voice cracking. "It is Cade. He is back." Halim went still. He knew the stories. He had patched Homer up when he came back from the war, pulling shrapnel out of his soul as much as his body. "And you have something he wants," Halim surmised. "I have a guest," Homer admitted. "And a piece of tech that could level a city. If I stay, Mia is in the crossfire. If I fight, I lose. I always lose against him, Doc. My whole platoon is dead because I trusted the system. I cannot watch Mia become collateral damage." Homer rubbed his face with his hands. "I am just a mechanic, Doc. I fix broken engines. I do not save worlds. I am tired. I am so tired of being the one who has to carry the weight." Dr. Halim reached out and tapped the table with a metal finger. Clink, clink. "You are not a mechanic, Homer," the old doctor said sternly. "You are a soldier who stopped taking orders. And you are a father. You think running will save Mia. Where will you go? Astrodyne owns the shipping lanes. They own the gates. If you run, you will be looking over your shoulder until the day they catch you. And they will catch you. So, would I stay and die? No, Halim said. You stay and you break his toy. You say you fix engines. Then fix this. Cade is building a machine to control the future. You are the guy who knows how to throw a wrench in the gears." Homer looked up. The fear was still there, but beneath it, the old stubbornness was rekindling. "I do not have a wrench big enough," Homer said. "Then build one," Halim grinned, his lens whirring. And, if you need parts, well, I have a few illegal capacitors in the basement I have been saving for a rainy day. The accident happened an hour later. Virginia was driving her patrol skiff toward the garage, speeding through the empty streets. Her mind was racing with Cade's threat. She had to warn Homer. She had to get him to surrender the alien or run, or she didn't know. Suddenly, the control stick in her hand locked. The dashboard lit up with a kaleidoscope of warning lights. System failure. Gyroscope desync. What? Virginia slammed the manual override. Nothing happened. The skiff veered sharply to the left, accelerating. It was heading straight for the support pillar of the maglev train track. Come on, Virginia screamed, pulling back on the stick with both hands. The probability of a gyroscope failing at this exact speed on a straight road was 1 in a million. Probability adjustment. Cade was not waiting. He was pruning the variable. Just as the skiff was about to impact, Virginia did the only thing she could. She fired the emergency ejection charges. The canopy blew off. Her seat rocketed into the air just as the skiff slammed into the concrete pillar. Boom! Fire engulfed the street below. Virginia tumbled through the air, her parachute deploying with a bone-jarring snap, only 50 feet from the ground. She crashed into a dumpster filled with synthetic packing foam, the breath knocked out of her. She lay there for a moment, staring up at the smoke. She was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline realization. He tried to kill her. He tried to kill her with a math equation. Virginia clawed her way out of the dumpster. She was bruised, her uniform was torn, and she had lost her data pad. But she was alive. She started running toward the garage. Homer was packing a duffel bag when the garage door hissed open. He spun around, pistol raised, only to lower it instantly. Ginny, Virginia, stood in the doorway covered in soot foam and blood. She looked like a vengeful spirit rising from the underworld. "Start the ship," she said, her voice raspy. "What happened?" Homer rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Are you hurt? Was it Cade?" "He hacked my car," Virginia spat, pushing hair out of her face. "He turned a standard patrol into an assassination attempt." "You were right, Homer. You were right about everything." Fanny stepped out from the shadows, Mia right behind her. "The probability waves are spiking," Fanny said. "He is testing the system. That was a targeted anomaly." "He tried to delete me," Virginia said, looking at Fanny. Then she looked at the bag on the workbench. "And you were leaving." Homer froze. "I was going to get Mia out. And you. I was going to come for you." "Liar," Virginia said. The hurt in her eyes was sharper than the shrapnel. "You were going to run, just like you ghosted everyone 10 years ago. You think you are protecting us by pushing us away? You are just making it easier for them to pick us off one by one." "I cannot fight an army, Virginia," Homer yelled back. "I am one guy with a garage full of junk." "You are not alone," Virginia screamed. She shoved him hard. "You have me. You have the doctor. You have a literal space queen in your living room. Why do you always have to be the martyr, Homer? Why do you think you are the only one allowed to bleed for this family?" Homer opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked at Mia. She wasn't looking at him with fear. She was looking at him with expectation. "Dad," Mia said quietly, "if we run, they win. And if they win, they are going to do to everyone else what they just tried to do to Virginia." Homer looked at his hands. He thought about the dodecahedron, the stabilizer core sitting in his pocket. He thought about the red lines on the map. "Chef Y," he whispered. "What?" Fanny asked. "Humanity," Homer said, looking up. A grin, sharp and devoid of humor, cut across his face. "Humanity, well, you know the rest. If they want to use my planet as a testing table, they are going to have to update their user manual." He walked over to the workbench and swept the duffel bag onto the floor. He grabbed a schematic of the Crown engine that Fanny had drawn. "Okay," Homer said. "New plan. We do not run. We crash the party." The garage transformed into a war room. Fanny laid out the technical specs. The Crown auction is happening on the derelict and abandoned module attached to the main orbital station. Cade is using it to avoid official station sensors. The Crown engine is there. If we can get close enough, I can use the stabilizer core to invert the signal. Invert it? Virginia asked, wiping blood from her forehead with a rag. Instead of pushing probability away from Astrodyne, we pull the entropy toward them, Fanny explained. We turn their luck shield into a luck magnet. Every glitch, every mechanical failure, every 1 in a million error will happen to their fleet simultaneously. But we need to get the core physically onto that station, Homer said. And they have a blockade. I can get us through the blockade, Virginia said. I still have my access codes. They tried to kill me, but they have not revoked my clearance yet because they think I am dead. I can mark your ship as a hazardous waste disposal transport. No one scans the garbage trucks. Okay, Homer nodded. So we fly in sneak onto the station, plant the core, and run like hell. I am going too, Mia said. Absolutely not, Homer and Fanny said in unison. You need me, Mia insisted, crossing her arms. Fanny, you said the Crown engine responds to intent, and visualization, right? You use the stars. But I understand probability better than any of you. Mia, this is not a video game, Homer warned. It is a game, Mia argued. It is RNG, random number generation. I have spent 5 years speedrunning games where I have to manipulate drop rates. I know how to visualize the outcome I want. Fanny can handle the big power, but I can handle the micro adjustments. I can keep the path clear. Fanny looked at the girl. She hesitated. The Crown engine does respond to the plasticity of a young mind. Her ability to accept the impossible might actually stabilize the connection. Fanny, do not encourage her, Homer growled. Dad, Mia stepped forward. She took his rough hand in hers. Mom is gone. You are all I have. If you go up there and don't come back, I am an orphan in a war zone. I am safer with you even in the fire than I am down here waiting for a phone call that never comes. Homer looked at Virginia. She nodded slowly. The kid has a point, Homer. We are a pack. We move together. Homer closed his eyes. He exhaled a long breath. Fine. But you stay behind me. And if I say run, you run. You do not stop to save a cat. You do not stop to grab loot. You run. Deal, Mia grinned. Okay, Homer turned to the group. Virginia, you are on comms and hacking. Fanny, you are the payload. Mia, you are the navigation support. I am the driver. He walked over to the wall and pulled a tarp off a massive, ugly, beautiful machine. Ladies, Homer said, patting the hull of his personal ship, the last call. Suit up. We are going to space. The last call was not a pretty ship. It was a Frankenstein's monster of hull plates, welded together from a dozen different vessels. It had the engines of a racer, the cargo hold of a smuggler, and the cockpit of a fighter jet. It roared to life, shaking the dust off the garage rafters. Systems check, Homer barked from the pilot seat. Comms online, Virginia said from the co-pilot chair. I have spoofed the transponder. We are now Sanitation Unit 4 Alpha. Probability drive standby, Fanny said. She was strapped into the cargo hold, sitting cross-legged around the glowing stabilizer core. Mia sat opposite her, holding her datapad, her face determined. Roof opening, Homer said. The heavy metal shutters of the garage ceiling groaned and slid back. The night sky, full of indifferent stars and hostile ships, waited above. Hold on to your lunch, Homer grinned, slamming the throttle forward. The last call screamed upward. It cleared the roof engines, flaring blue-white. The G-force pressed them into their seats. Warning! The ship's computer droned. Approaching blockade net. Virginia, talk to them, Homer yelled. Transmission sent, Virginia typed furiously. Sending clearance code biohazard waste from Sector 4 outbreak. Requesting immediate docking for incineration. There was a tense silence. The radio crackled. Sanitation Unit 4 Alpha, a bored voice came through. You are cleared for approach to the waste disposal airlock on Module 9. Maintain vector. Do not deviate. We are in, Virginia exhaled. Homer guided the ship through the atmosphere. The blue sky faded to black. Below them, Dustfall was a marble of brown and gray. Ahead, the Astrodyne station loomed like a jagged black crown against the sun. I see it, Homer said. The derelict module. It is the one with the flickering lights on the lower ring. That is where the auction is, Fanny's voice came over the headset. I can feel the engine. It is singing. I am hungry. On the bridge of the Obsidian Admiral, Cade watched the radar screen. A single green dot was moving toward the station tagged as a garbage scow. Admiral, the lieutenant said. Shall I intercept the transport? Cade sipped his tea. He zoomed in on the scan of the ship. He recognized the thruster signature. He had seen a similar modification on a mech suit 20 years ago. No, Cade smiled. Let them land. A test requires a variable to struggle against. If we just crush them, the data is boring. Let them come close. Let them think they have a chance. He turned to the massive window where the VIP guests were gathering. Gentlemen, Cade addressed the holograms of the warlords. The demonstration is about to begin, and I have arranged a special live-fire exercise for your entertainment. As the last call docked with a metallic clang, Homer unbuckled his harness. He racked the slide of his ion shotgun. Remember, Homer said, looking at his family, the officer, the queen, and the kid. We are not here to win a debate. We are here to flip the table. Let us go ghost them, Virginia said, pulling out her stun baton. Homer laughed. It was a good sound. Yeah, let us go ghost them. They moved to the airlock, ready to step into the belly of the beast. The grand atrium of the derelict module was not designed for comfort. It was designed for awe. The floor was a single sheet of transparent plasteel, offering a vertiginous view of Dustfall, rotating slowly below a marble of bruised brown and gray against the velvet black. Above the guests, a chandelier made of captive plasma pulsed in rhythm with the ambient hum of the station's reactor. The guests themselves were a gallery of the galaxy's most dangerous, influential figures. There was General Vrak from the Outer Rim, his carapace polished to a mirror, shine-clinking champagne flutes, with a representative from the Trade Federation, whose face was entirely obscured by digital advertisements. In the center of the room, behind a field of dampening energy, sat the prize, the Crown engine. It did not look like a machine. It looked like a frozen explosion of gold and violet crystal, suspended in a magnetic cradle. At its heart, a hollow space waited pulsing, with a rhythm that felt uncomfortably like a heartbeat. Admiral Cade Rowan stood on a raised dais, a glass of water in his hand. He looked less like a soldier, and more like a high priest of some terrifying new religion. Welcome, Cade's voice was amplified smooth as silk over steel. You have all come here seeking certainty. In a universe of chaos where markets crash and fleets vanish in storms, you want the one thing money cannot usually buy, a guarantee. He gestured to the engine. The Crown engine does not predict the future. That is a parlor trick for fortune tellers. The engine selects the future. It takes the chaotic probability of reality, the roll of the dice, and it loads the dice in your favor. Up in the ventilation shaft, 40 feet above the General's shiny head, Homer Galloway was trying very hard not to sneeze. This is tight, Homer whispered, his voice echoing slightly in the cramped metal tube. I swear these vents were bigger when I was in the service. You were 20 pounds lighter and had less gray hair when you were in the service, Virginia whispered back from behind him. She was crawling on her elbows, pushing a heavy satchel containing Dr. Halim's hacking rig. Keep moving. Your butt is blocking the airflow. It is a tactical blockade, Homer grunted, inching forward. He paused at a grate, peering down at the glittering crowd below. Look at them, vultures. They are bidding on how to ruin my planet. Focus, Homer. Virginia poked his ankle. We are at the junction. Left goes to the server room. Right goes to the resonance chamber where Fanny and Mia need to be. Homer tapped his earpiece. Team Bravo, sound off. Are you in position? The line crackled. Then a hushed voice came through. We are in the service elevator. Fanny's voice was tense. Mia is eating a protein bar, loudly. It helps me think, Mia's voice chimed in, followed by a crunch. We are 2 minutes from the resonance chamber, Fanny continued. The guards are heavy on the main deck, but the service corridors are empty. Just like you said. Good, Homer said. Remember the plan. We plant the bug in the server room to disrupt Cade's control. You get to the engine room and slot the stabilizer core. When the auction starts, we flip the switch. And then we run, Mia added. And then we run, Homer confirmed. Break. He looked back at Virginia. In the dim, red emergency light of the shaft, she looked fierce. Her uniform was torn from the crash earlier, and she had a smear of grease on her cheek. She looked beautiful. Stop staring and start crawling, she whispered. I wasn't staring, Homer lied. I was checking your 6. My 6 is fine. Your 12 is stuck on a rivet. Move. They shimmied forward, the sounds of the auction fading into the hum of the station's life support systems. The resonance chamber was less of a room and more of a cathedral dedicated to math. The walls were lined with banks of ancient non-human processors that hummed with a sound that vibrated in the teeth. In the center, a massive conduit tube ran up through the ceiling directly into the bottom of the crown engine in the ballroom above. Fanny and Mia crouched behind a bank of servers. Fanny was wearing a technician's jumpsuit she had swiped from a laundry locker, her tail painfully tucked down one pant leg. Mia was wearing an oversized hoodie, clutching her datapad like a shield. Okay, Fanny whispered. The induction port is right there, on the side of the main conduit. 2 guards stood by the door. They were human, but their eyes were glazed over, covered by tactical visors that fed them constant stream of data. Astrodyne cyborgs. How do we get past them? Mia asked. Dad said no shooting unless we have to. I am the queen of the Starcats, Fanny said, adjusting her collar. I do not need to shoot. I just need to be authoritative. She stood up and walked briskly toward the guards, holding a clipboard she had found in the trash. Mia scurried behind her, trying to look invisible. Halt, one of the guards droned, stepping forward. Restricted area. Fanny didn't break stride. She looked at the guard with a mixture of boredom and contempt that only a feline species could truly master. Probability fluctuation in Sector 7, Fanny barked, glancing at her clipboard. The Admiral ordered a recalibration of the lower stabilizers before the demo. Unless you want to explain to him why the engine backfired and turned his guests into jelly, I suggest you step aside. The guard paused. His visor flashed as he processed the request. I have no record of a maintenance order. Of course you don't, Fanny scoffed. It is a Level 1 clearance override. If it were on the public logs, the guests would panic. Do you want to cause a panic? The guard hesitated. The logic was sound enough to confuse his basic programming. Identification. Fanny held up a blank keycard she had stolen. Scan it, but be quick. The probability variance is increasing by 0.05% every second we waste. The guard reached for the card. Fanny's tail, agitated by the stress, twitched violently inside her pants. A low, involuntary hiss escaped her throat. Shh! The guard froze. What was that noise? Fanny cleared her throat loudly. Hydraulics. My knee hydraulics. Very old model. Needs oil. Mia, thinking fast, tapped her datapad. She hacked into the local speaker system and played a sound file she had saved for pranks, a loud screeching sound of metal grinding on metal. Screech! The guards winced, covering their audio receptors. See, Fanny yelled over the noise. Terrible hydraulics. Let us in. The guard waved them through, too annoyed by the noise to argue. Go, fix it. They slipped inside the chamber, and the heavy door hissed shut behind them. Fanny slumped against the wall, exhaling. Hydraulics, Mia giggled. Be quiet. Fanny smoothed her hair, her ears popping up as she removed the helmet. It was a tactical improvisation. She walked to the conduit. Up close, the hum was deafening. She pulled the dodecahedron, the stabilizer core, from her bag. It was glowing fiercely now, sensing its parent machine above. Mia, Fanny said, her voice serious. When I plug this in, it is going to try to merge with my mind. It is going to show me everything. The past, the future, the might-have-beens. Like a really intense VR game, Mia asked. Like drowning in an ocean of time, Fanny corrected. If I get lost, if I start to drift, you have to pull me back. Use your datapad. Use the connection. Anchor me. I got you, Mia said, gripping her pad. I will be your player too, Fanny nodded. She stepped up to the induction port. It was a hexagonal slot perfectly shaped for the artifact Homer had carried for 10 years. She took a breath. She slotted the core home. Click. The room vanished. Homer and Virginia dropped out of the vent into the server room. It was cool and dark, lit only by the blinking blue lights of the server racks. Okay, Homer whispered, dusting off his knees. Where is the main uplink? Virginia pointed to a terminal in the center of the room. There. That is the trunk line for the station's security and the engine's interface. They rushed over. Homer pulled out Dr. Halim's device, a messy tangle of wires and processors inside a plastic lunchbox. High tech, Virginia smirked. Hey, if it looks stupid but it works, it is not stupid, Homer muttered, plugging the lunchbox into the terminal. The screen flashed green. Lines of code began to scroll rapidly. We are in, Virginia typed on the keyboard. I am locking the blast doors to this room. We have about 5 minutes before their cybersecurity sniffers find us. That is 5 minutes to ruin Cade's sales pitch, Homer said. Suddenly, the screen flickered. The scrolling code stopped. A face appeared on the monitor. It was Admiral Cade. Homer stiffened. He knows. Hello, Sergeant Galloway. Cade's digital avatar smiled. It wasn't a recording. He was looking right at them. And, Officer Thorne, I must say, for a dead woman, you look remarkably healthy. Cut the feed, Homer shouted, reaching for the cable. Do not, Cade's voice was calm. If you disconnect my security protocols, we'll flood the room with neurotoxin. Let us chat, Homer. Old time's sake. Homer pulled his hand back. He glared at the screen. You look old, Cade. The stress of being a monster is catching up to you. And you look tired, Cade countered. Still fighting wars you cannot win. You think you are clever sneaking in here, I let you in. The vents, the elevator. Did you really think my security was that lax? Virginia stepped forward. Why let us get this close? Because a demonstration needs a volunteer, Cade said. I needed to show these buyers that the engine can handle active interference. You are not the saboteurs, Homer. You are the test subjects. We will see about that, Homer snarled. We are uploading a virus right now that is going to turn your engine into a paperweight. Are you? Cade chuckled. Or are you just delivering the missing piece I needed, the stabilizer core? I knew you had it. I knew if I threatened the girl, you would bring it to me. And right now, your feline friend is plugging it in for me. Homer's blood ran cold. It is a trap. It is efficiency, Cade corrected. Thank you for the delivery, Homer. Now watch what real power looks like. The screen went black. The doors, Virginia shouted. The blast doors to the server room didn't lock. They opened. Standing in the corridor were 6 combat droids, their weapons raised. Plan B, Homer yelled, flipping the heavy metal table over for cover. We do not have a Plan B, Virginia yelled back, diving behind a server rack as plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Then we make one up. Homer fired his ion shotgun over the table. Thumb. The blast knocked the first droid back, but 2 more stepped up. Virginia, Homer shouted over the noise of the firefight. Can you hijack the door controls? I am trying, Virginia tapped furiously on her wrist computer. They have locked me out of the main system. Use the emergency protocols, Homer reloaded. Bureaucracy. Use bureaucracy. Virginia paused. What? The fire code, Homer yelled. Trigger a false alarm. Safety regulations require all automated doors to open in case of fire, and all non-essential droids to enter standby mode for evacuation. Virginia's eyes lit up. That is so boring it might just work. She accessed the station's safety subnet. It was an unencrypted low-priority system. She flagged a level 5 chemical fire in the corridor. Alarm! Alarm! The station's automated voice boomed. Warning! Chemical hazard detected. Initiating safety protocol 99. All security personnel please secure heavy weaponry and proceed to muster stations. The droids froze. Their programming was fighting itself: kill the intruders or follow the overriding safety directive hard-coded into their base OS. Their lights turned from angry red to confused yellow. They lowered their weapons and began to march in a single file line away from the door. Please proceed to the nearest exit in an orderly fashion, the lead droid droned as it walked past Homer. Homer stood up blinking. I love safety regulations. Do not celebrate yet, Virginia grabbed his arm. We have to get to the resonance chamber. Cade is starting the demo. In the resonance chamber, Fanny was screaming silently. Her body was there kneeling on the floor, her hand fused to the stabilizer core. But her mind was gone. She was floating in a void of white light. Around her, lines of probability stretched out like infinite strings of yarn. She saw a million futures. She saw Dustfall burning. She saw Dustfall blooming. She saw Homer dying in the corridor. She saw Homer laughing at a wedding. She saw herself on a throne of skulls. She saw herself serving drinks in the garage. The power was intoxicating. She felt the crown engine responding to her royal blood. It wanted to give her everything. It whispered to her that she could fix it all. She could erase Cade. She could erase the humans who had hurt her. She could make the Starcats the masters of the galaxy again. Take it, the engine whispered. Rule them. Fanny. The voice was faint, like a radio signal from another planet. Fanny, look at the tablet. Fanny looked down in the void. A small, crude drawing appeared in the white space. It was a stick figure drawing of a cat, a man with a wrench, a woman with a badge, and a girl with messy hair. They were standing in front of a crooked garage. The drawing was titled The Weirdos. Fanny blinked. The rage, the ambition, it felt heavy. But the drawing felt light. Mia, Fanny whispered. Back in the chamber, Mia was frantically drawing on her datapad. The screen was connected via a cable to the same console Fanny was touching. Come on, Fanny, Mia muttered, sweat dripping down her nose. Don't go queen on me. Be the cool cat lady. Come back to the garage. She was visualizing the path. She wasn't fighting the probability. She was surfing it. She was using her gamer instincts to find the win condition in the chaos. In the void, Fanny grabbed the drawing. The white light shattered. She gasped, her eyes snapping open in the real world. She was back. The engine was humming louder now, a screaming pitch. I am here, Fanny panted. I am here. Did you do it? Mia asked. Is the core integrated? Yes, Fanny said, her eyes glowing with a dangerous power. And I know how to aim it. Above them in the ballroom, the lights dimmed. And now, Cade announced to the room. The demonstration. He tapped a console on his podium. We will start with a simple adjustment. The weather on Dustfall. Currently there is a 0% chance of a meteor shower in the southern hemisphere. Let us change that to 100%. The guests murmured in appreciation. Cade slid a virtual fader up. The crown engine pulsed. A beam of energy shot up from the device through the transparent roof and toward the planet below. But then, the light changed color. Instead of the cold, clinical blue of Astrodyne, the beam turned a warm, chaotic violet. The station shook. Warning, the computer voice said. Probability matrix unstable. Target lock failed. Recalculating. Cade frowned. He tapped the console. Correction. Override. Unable to override, the computer said. New target designated. What target? Cade demanded. Target orbital station Obsidian. The room went silent. The guests looked at each other. What does that mean? General Vrak asked. It means, Cade hissed, looking down at the engine, that our probability of a catastrophic hull failure has just gone from 0 to 90%. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared on the transparent floor of the ballroom. Panic. Instant, expensive panic. The warlords and CEOs screamed and scrambled for the exits. It is them, Cade roared. Galloway, Homer, and Virginia burst into the resonance chamber just as the station lurched violently. We have to go, Homer yelled. The whole station is shaking apart. I did it, Fanny yelled, pulling her hand away from the core. It was now locked in place, spinning wildly. I inverted the luck. Every bad thing Cade tried to send to Dustfall is bouncing back onto him. Maybe we did it too well. Virginia shouted as a steam pipe burst overhead. The artificial gravity is failing. They began to float. Mia grabbed a handle on the wall. This is awesome. This is not awesome. This is a death trap. Homer grabbed Mia's ankle. To the ship now. They pulled themselves along the handrails, fighting the fluctuating gravity. The station was groaning metal, shearing against metal. They reached the service elevator, but the doors were jammed. Let me, Fanny said. She placed her hand on the metal. She didn't use strength. She just closed her eyes and tweaked the odds. The probability of the locking mechanism failing due to rust right now is 100%. Clang. The doors sprang open. Show off, Homer grunted. They scrambled into the elevator. As they descended toward the docking bay, Homer looked at his team. They were battered, bruised, and floating in 0G, but they were smiling. We surely showed him, Mia cheered. We are not out yet, Homer said, checking his ammo. Cade won't let us leave. He is going to be waiting at the hangar. The hangar bay was a chaotic scene. Debris was falling from the ceiling. Alarms were blaring. And standing between them and the last call was Admiral Cade. He was alone. No guards. He held a heavy pulse rifle in one hand, and he looked perfectly calm amidst the destruction. Leaving so soon? Cade asked, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. Homer stepped to the front, shielding the others. It is over, Cade. The engine is eating your station. Your guests are fleeing. You have nothing to sell. I still have the core, Cade said, raising the rifle. And I still have you. Why? Homer shouted. Why is it so personal? It has been 10 years. Why do you care about one mechanic? Cade smiled. Because you are the anomaly, Homer. In every simulation I ran, in every prediction, you died on that moon. You should be dead. But you are here, and I cannot stand a variable I cannot solve. He aimed at Mia. So I am going to remove the variable. Time seemed to slow down. Homer saw Cade's finger tighten on the trigger. He knew he couldn't reach Mia in time. He knew Virginia was too far back. He saw Fanny's eyes widen. Homer didn't think. He didn't calculate. He just moved. He lunged, not at Cade, but at the control panel for the atmospheric force field next to him. Probability of a mechanic hitting a manual release button with a wrench from 20 feet away low. Probability of a father saving his daughter infinite. Homer threw the wrench. It spun through the air, end over end. Clang. It hit the emergency vent button. The force field keeping the vacuum of space out of the hangar flickered and died. Whoosh. The air was sucked out of the room in a violent explosion of decompression. Cade was pulled off his feet. He fired wildly, the shot going wide, hitting the ceiling. He tumbled backward, grabbing onto a cargo net to stop himself from being sucked into space. Get to the ship, Homer screamed, or tried to scream, but there was no air. He pointed. They scrambled into the airlock of the last call, the vacuum, pulling at their clothes. Fanny grabbed Mia. Virginia grabbed Fanny. Homer grabbed the railing, his boots sliding on the floor. He looked back. Cade was holding on, his face contorted in fury. Homer let go of the railing and let the vacuum pull him toward the ship's ramp. He grabbed the hydraulic strut of the landing gear and hauled himself inside. Virginia hit the seal button. The ramp hissed shut. Air flooded back into the cabin. "Go, go, go!" Homer yelled, scrambling to the pilot's seat. He punched the thrusters. The last call tore away from the docking clamp. Outside the viewport, they saw the hangar bay receding. Cade was still there, clinging to the net, staring at them as the station crumbled around him. "He is still alive," Virginia said, watching the screen. "Not for long," Fanny said. "Look." The Crown engine's backlash hit its peak. A massive bolt of violet lightning erupted from the center of the station. It didn't destroy the station. It changed it. The obsidian suddenly lost all orbital momentum. It simply stopped moving. And then gravity took over. "It is falling," Mia whispered. The massive station began to tilt, pulled down by Dustfall's gravity well. "He is going to crash it," Homer realized. "He is going to crash the station onto the planet." "He is turning the whole station into a meteor," Virginia gasped. "If that hits Port Harmony, it is an extinction event." Homer looked at the controls. His hands were shaking. "We have to stop it," Homer said. "How?" Fanny asked. "We just escaped." Homer looked at the Crown engine controls on Mia's datapad, still connected remotely. "We have the remote link," Homer said. "We cannot stop the station from falling. But maybe we can change where it falls." He looked at Fanny. "One last roll of the dice." Fanny placed her hand on the screen. She looked at Homer. "One last roll," she agreed. Homer turned the ship around, facing the falling mountain of metal. "Hang on," Homer said, his voice grim. "We are going back in range." On the screen, Cade's face appeared again, hacking their comms one last time. He was in an escape pod now, launching away from the doomed station. "You lose Galloway," Cade laughed, his face distorted by the transmission. "I may have lost the auction, but I will take you home with me. That is the thing about bad luck, it is contagious." Homer stared at the screen. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single physical object he had kept in his flight suit for years. A real, two-headed coin. He flipped it in the air. "Heads we die," Homer said. "Heads we win." He caught it. He didn't look at it. "Spoiler alert," Homer whispered. "It is always heads." He slammed the throttle forward, diving the last call toward the falling station. The universe was not screaming. It was hiccuping. Around the falling obsidian station, the laws of physics were having a nervous breakdown. On the surface of Dustfall, a vending machine that had been broken for 10 years suddenly dispensed 300 cans of iced coffee in perfect chilled condition. A cargo ship with a ruptured fuel line managed to glide safely into port on fumes because the wind shifted in a way that meteorologists would later describe as statistically impossible. Inside the cockpit of the last call, Homer Galloway was wrestling with a control stick that felt like it was fighting a hurricane. "Shields are fluctuating," Virginia yelled from the co-pilot seat. "1 second, they are at 10%. The next, they are at 500%. The probability waves are going haywire." "It is the backlash," Homer shouted, sweat dripping down his nose. "We broke Cade's toy, but we didn't turn it off. It is leaking luck all over the sector." In the cargo hold, Fanny and Mia were huddled around the remote uplink. The holographic display of the Crown engine was fracturing, splitting into dozens of potential realities. Mia was typing furiously on her datapad. "I cannot stabilize it. The entropy is too high. It is like trying to stack dice during an earthquake." "I have to go back in," Fanny said. Her voice was strangely calm, the eye of the storm. "No," Mia grabbed her arm. "Last time you almost got lost. If you go deeper now, you might never come back." "If I do not," Fanny said, looking at the screen where the station was tumbling toward the atmosphere. "Dustfall burns, and so do we." She looked up toward the cockpit. "Homer, get me closer. I need the signal to be absolute." Homer gritted his teeth. "Hold on. I am going to park us right on the nose of that falling brick." The last call dove. The ship shuddered as it pierced the atmospheric entry cone of the falling station. Fire roared around the hull, orange plasma licking at the shields. Fanny closed her eyes. She reached out not with her hands, but with her mind, finding the golden thread of the stabilizer core she had left behind in the engine room. She pulled, and the world dissolved. Fanny was standing in a hallway. It was not the obsidian. It was a muddy trench on a moon that smelled of sulfur and blood. The sky was choked with smoke. Explosions rocked the ground. She knew this place. She had never been here physically, but she had lived here 1,000 times in her nightmares. Titan, the Ridge, 10 years ago. "Command, this is Bravo Squad," a voice screamed. It was raw, desperate, and young. Fanny turned. She saw him, Homer. But he was not the gray-haired, cynical mechanic she knew. He was young. His face was unlined, but his eyes were filled with terror. He was clutching a radio, huddled next to a soldier who was already gone. "Asset denial," the radio crackled. Cade's voice, cold, final. Fanny felt the sob rise in her throat. This was the moment. The moment the universe decided Homer Galloway should die. The probability of survival was 0.001%. A mortar shell was whistling down trajectory, locked on his position. In the original timeline, the cold, unfeeling timeline of physics, that shell landed. Homer died. Mia was never born. Dustfall remained a scrap heap. But 10 years ago, a young Starcat princess, bored and lonely in her tower, had been playing with the Crown engine. She had been scanning the galaxy for interesting noise, and she had found a terrified soldier singing a lullaby to himself in a trench. "I saw you," Fanny whispered to the memory. "I heard you." In the vision, the spectral form of the young Fanny reached out. She didn't have the power to stop the war. She didn't have the power to save the platoon. The entropy was too heavy. The death toll was already written. But she could twist one thread. She could move one variable. She shoved the probability of a dud shell from 1% to 100%. Thud. The shell landed 3 feet from Homer. It did not explode. It just sat there smoking. Homer stared at it. He looked up, confused, alive. But there was a cost. To save him, she had to divert the luck from somewhere else. The support column for the rest of the trench collapsed. The other 12 men didn't make it. Fanny fell to her knees in the vision. She covered her face. "I did it," she sobbed. "I killed them to save you." Then the scene shifted. She was in a dark room typing on a holographic keyboard. User Starcat 88 to H. Galloway. Message: "You are still alive. Keep breathing, please." She saw herself chatting with him for months. He thought she was a logistics officer on a supply hauler. She was his anchor, and he was hers. He made her laugh when the royal court was suffocating her. She made him feel human when the PTSD was drowning him. Then, the Astrodyne tracers started. They were hunting for the anomaly, the person who had altered the probability on Titan. She saw herself deleting the account, ghosting him. "I had to," she pleaded to the silence. "If I stayed, they would have found you. They would have dissected you to see why the universe bent around you." "Fanny." She spun around. Homer was standing there. Not the memory. The real Homer. He was glowing with a faint blue light projecting into the mental space via the link in the cockpit. He looked at the trench. He looked at the dud shell. He looked at the collapsed tunnel where his friends had died. He looked at her. "It was you," Homer said. His voice was not angry. It was shattered. "The ghost, the luck. It was all you." Fanny couldn't look him in the eye. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. I am a monster. I traded their lives for yours. I chose favorites." Homer walked toward her. The scenery flickered, the trench replaced by the garage, then the station, then the trench again. "I blamed myself for 10 years, Homer whispered. "I thought I survived because I was a coward. I thought I lived because I didn't fight hard enough." "You lived because I loved you," Fanny cried out. "Even before we met. I loved the voice in the dark. And because of that, Cade won. He got his casualty count. I gave it to him. Homer stood before her. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was rough, warm, and real. You didn't give him anything, Homer said firmly. Cade fired the weapon. You just pulled one guy out of the fire. But the others... The others would have died anyway, Homer said. He looked at the ghosts of his squad. Cade wrote that order. Not you. You are not the villain of this story, Fanny. You are the only reason there is a story. He squeezed her hand. You ghosted me to save me. You lived with that guilt for a decade. That is a heavy load to carry alone, Your Highness. I was afraid you would hate me, she whispered. Homer let out a short, wet laugh. Hate you, Fanny, look around. The vision shifted. It showed Mia drawing in the garage. It showed Virginia eating noodles on the workbench. It showed the last call fighting gravity. You gave me a second chance, Homer said, and I used it to build a family. A messy, broken, beautiful family. You are not a monster. You are the architect of my life. He pulled her into a hug. In the mind space, it felt like two stars colliding. Now, Homer said, pulling back, we have a station to catch, and a bad guy to embarrass. Are you with me? Fanny wiped her eyes. The violet fire in her irises returned brighter than ever. Always, she said. They are waking up, Mia yelled in the cockpit. Homer gasped, his body jerking in the pilot seat. He grabbed the controls instinctively. Status, he barked. The station is entering the upper atmosphere, Virginia yelled. Impact in 2 minutes. It is going to hit the tectonic fault line outside Port Harmony. If it hits there, the quake will level the city. Not if we change the landing zone, Homer said. Fanny. I am ready. Fanny's voice came over the comms, clear and regal. I need you to fly the last call into the slipstream of the station. We need to become the rudder. That is suicide, Virginia said. The turbulence will tear us apart. Never tell a mechanic what his ship can't do, Homer grinned. Hold on. He slammed the thrusters. The last call dove under the falling bulk of the obsidian. The heat was intense. The metal groaned. Now, Fanny, Homer yelled. Push! In the cargo hold, Fanny and Mia joined hands. They touched the screen. Fanny didn't try to stop the fall. Gravity was too strong. Instead, she visualized a slip, a grease patch on the fabric of reality. The probability of a sudden high-pressure atmospheric updraft occurring right here is now 100%. Boom. A massive wall of air slammed into the bottom of the falling station. It didn't stop it, but it tipped it. The trillion-ton structure slid sideways across the sky like a skipping stone. It is turning, Mia cheered. It is heading for the salt flats. That is uninhabited, Virginia said, checking the map. It is a graveyard for old ships. Perfect parking spot, Homer grunted, fighting the G-force. One more push. Get it clear of the ridge. Fanny poured everything she had into the engine. She visualized the station as a feather. She visualized the ground as a pillow. The obsidian screamed over the city of Port Harmony so low that it shattered every window in the skyline. It cleared the mountain ridge by inches, and then it crashed into the salt flats. It wasn't a graceful landing. It plowed into the white earth, kicking up a mushroom cloud of salt and dust 10 miles high. The ground shook violently, a wave of force that rattled teeth halfway across the planet. But Port Harmony stood. The last call, buffeted by the shockwave, spun wildly out of control. We are stalling, Homer yelled. Engines are choked with dust. I got it, I got it. Virginia slammed the emergency restart. The engines sputtered, coughed, and then roared back to life just 1,000 feet from the ground. Homer leveled the ship out his hands, shaking so hard he could barely hold the stick. They glided over the crash site. The obsidian lay broken and smoking, a dead giant, half buried in salt. We did it, Mia whispered. Not quite, Homer said, pointing at the radar. Look who is trying to sneak out the back door. A small, sleek escape ship was rising from the wreckage of the station, heading for the orbital gate. "Cade," Fanny hissed. "He is running for international waters," Virginia said. "If he gets through that gate, he enters the neutral zone. We can't touch him." "Oh no," Homer growled. "He does not get to walk away. Not this time." "We are out of ammo," Virginia reminded him, "and the probability drive is burned out." "We do not need ammo," Homer said. "Fanny, do you have one more trick in the bag?" "I am drained, Homer," Fanny said, her voice weak. "I cannot move a mountain again." "I do not need a mountain," Homer said. "I just need a pebble. Just a tiny little mechanical failure." Fanny smiled. She closed her eyes. She reached out to the fleeing ship. She couldn't crush it. She couldn't explode it. But she could find the fuel injection valve on the starboard thruster. Probability of a microfracture in the fuel line, 100%. High above them, Cade's ship suddenly vented a plume of blue gas. One engine died. The ship entered a violent spin. It didn't crash, but it lost all escape velocity. "He is drifting," Virginia laughed. "He is drifting right into the patrol path of the Planetary Union blockade." "And look who is hailing them," Mia pointed at the comms. On the public channel, a video feed popped up. It was Admiral Cade looking disheveled, screaming at his computer. And behind him, on every screen in the system, a video was playing. It was the recording from the server room, the one where Cade admitted to everything: the asset denial, the murder of the platoon, the illegal testing on Dustfall. "How?" Homer asked. "While you guys were playing superhero with the station," Virginia smirked, tapping her wrist. "I was uploading the evidence I scraped from the server room to the news network. It is live, everywhere." "So," Homer leaned back, watching Cade's ship being surrounded by Union cruisers. "He is not dead." "Better," Virginia said. "He is broke, and he is going to prison. For a very, very long time. The Union doesn't like it when you try to drop a space station on a tax-paying city." The sun was setting by the time they landed back at the garage. The garage door was hanging off its hinges from the launch. The roof was scorched, but it was still standing. They walked out of the ship, their legs wobbly. The air smelled of ozone and salt, but it was the sweetest air Homer had ever tasted. Dr. Halim was waiting for them, sitting on a lawn chair with a bottle of champagne and 4 plastic cups. "I assume we won?" the doctor asked, his mechanical eye whirring. "Since I am not currently a cloud of radioactive vapor." "We won, Doc," Homer said, taking the bottle. He popped the cork. It flew off and hit a passing drone, knocking it out of the sky. "Oops," Homer shrugged. "Still a little luck residue, I guess." They sat on the hood of the last call, watching the twilight settle over the desert. Mia fell asleep almost instantly, leaning against Fanny. Virginia sat next to Homer, nursing a cup. "So," Virginia said, looking at the two of them. "The ghost, huh?" Homer looked at Fanny. The Queen looked exhausted, her royal aura gone, replaced by a quiet, contented tiredness. "Yeah," Homer said. "She ghosted me." "And you forgave her?" Virginia asked softly. "She saved my life, Ginny," Homer said. "And she came back. That is the part that matters." She came back. Virginia looked at her cup. She took a long sip. "I checked the regulations. There is a loophole in the planetary immigration law. If a political refugee assists in preventing a planetary catastrophe, they are granted automatic asylum and citizenship." She looked at Fanny. "Welcome to Dustfall, citizen," Fanny smiled. "Thank you, officer. Does this mean I have to pay taxes?" "Unfortunately," Virginia laughed. "Civilization has its price." Virginia stood up. She stretched. "I should go. I have a lot of paperwork to file, and a mayor to yell at." She looked at Homer. There was a moment, a small, sad, sweet moment where the possibility of them hung in the air. But Virginia smiled, a genuine, mature smile. She saw the way Homer looked at Fanny. She saw the bond that transcended time and space. "You are a good man, Homer Galloway," Virginia said. Try not to get arrested until I have had at least 8 hours of sleep. No promises, Homer saluted. Virginia walked away into the night, her step light. She wasn't the girl who got the guy. She was the woman who saved the world. And that, she decided, was a pretty good trade. Later, inside the garage, Homer was cleaning grease off his hands, a futile task as always. Fanny was sitting on the workbench, swinging her legs. Mia was snoring softly on the couch in the corner. "So," Fanny said, looking around the cluttered, messy workshop. "This is it, my new kingdom, a garage." "It is not much," Homer said, drying his hands. "But the rent is cheap, and the landlord is a pushover." "I am a queen who lost her crown," Fanny mused. "I have no army. I have no fleet. I am just Fanny." "You are not just Fanny," Homer said. He walked over to her. "You are the best mechanic's assistant I have ever had, even if you do complain about the jumpsuit." "It itches," she countered. "We will get you a cotton one," Homer promised. He looked at her. The silence between them wasn't filled with jokes or deflection anymore. It was filled with 10 years of words they hadn't said. "Why did you come to the garage?" Homer asked. "That night. Of all the places on the planet, you crashed in my backyard." Fanny smiled. Her eyes glowed softly. "I told you, Homer. Starcats see the currents of probability. When I was falling, when I was dying, I didn't aim for a safe place. I aimed for home." Homer felt a lump in his throat. Home. "You are my fixed point," Fanny whispered. "In a universe of chaos, you are the one thing that never changes. You are the rock." "I am just a guy with a wrench," Homer said hoarsely. "And I am just a girl who likes the way you fix things," she replied. She leaned in. Homer leaned in. Ping. They both jumped. Homer looked at his pocket. He pulled out his old battered communicator, the one he used for the secret frequency. There was a message. "Sender, Starcat 88. Message. She ghosted you again." "Not this time." Homer looked at Fanny. She was holding her own datapad, a mischievous grin on her face. "You are terrible," Homer laughed. "I am consistent," she purred. "Are we going to keep the cats?" Homer blinked. "What?" Mia's voice came from the couch. She wasn't asleep. "I said, are we going to keep the cats? I saw a box of kittens behind the bakery today. Fanny said we need them. To balance the feline energy or something." Homer looked at Fanny. "You are recruiting an army." "A very small, fluffy army," Fanny admitted. "It gets lonely between the stars, Homer. We need a crew." Homer looked at the two of them, the alien queen and his daughter, his messy, impossible life. "Fine," Homer sighed, though he was smiling. "But they are staying in the garage. No cats on the bed." "We will see about the probability of that," Fanny winked. Epilogue, 6 months later. Dustfall had changed. The crash of the obsidian in the salt flats had become a tourist attraction. People came from 3 sectors away to see the monument to hubris. The economy was booming. Astrodyne had pulled out of the sector, their reputation in tatters. The Starcats had been granted official protected status by the union recognized as independent partners. But the biggest change was at Galloway's garage. The sign out front had been repainted. It now read, "Galloway and Associates Repairs, Tune-ups and Probability Consulting." Inside, it was chaos. There were 4 kittens climbing the tire rack. Mia was sitting at the counter doing homework while running a side hustle predicting lottery numbers for the locals. Homer made her donate the proceeds to the orphanage, but she kept 10% for administrative fees. Virginia stopped by every Tuesday for noodles. She had been promoted to Chief of Planetary Security. She complained about the paperwork, but she looked happy. And in the back, under the hood of a massive freighter, were 2 mechanics. "Hydrospanner," Homer called out. "Here," Fanny said, slapping the tool into his hand instantly. She was wearing a custom-tailored soft cotton jumpsuit with a hole cut for her tail. "You are getting faster," Homer noted. I am anticipating your needs, Fanny said smugly. It is a royal prerogative. Homer slid out from under the ship. He wiped his face. He looked at the wall. Mia had hung a new drawing there. It was done in charcoal and real paint. It showed a group of people standing under a sky exploding with fireworks, or maybe probability lines. There was a man with a wrench looking tired but content, a girl with wild hair holding a datapad, a woman in a uniform with a stun baton, and a woman with cat ears and a tail holding the man's hand. At their feet were 4 tiny kittens. The title scrawled at the bottom read, "Those Who Stayed." Homer looked at the drawing. He looked at Fanny, who was currently wrestling a kitten for control of a roll of duct tape. "Hey," Homer said. Fanny looked up. "Yes." "You missed a spot on the intake valve," Homer deadpanned. Fanny hissed playfully and threw a rag at his head. Homer caught it laughing. Outside, the ion rain started to fall, drumming on the roof. But inside it was warm. The lights were on. The garage was full. And for the first time in 10 years, Homer Galloway wasn't waiting for a message. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. The end.